FNAF Fan Games have always differed when it came to their quality. Some were an absolute gem with a mixture of comedy and colorful art, like the widely adored One Night at Freddy series. Here, I would like to address these kinds of fan games as gag horror, and that isn't to take away anything from their actual gameplay, finding a balance between comedic elements with fear, so it's obvious that these kinds of games don't take themselves too seriously. It isn't just limited to the all-powerful egg creature, as Pop Goes Arcade has many different lines of dialogue simply there to make the player laugh. It's these kinds of games that show just how diverse and creative the game developers that work on FNAF fan games can really be, with a lot of times some of the lesser known quote-unquote FNAF clones that typically don't do anything new to the core elements presented in FNAF 1, just essentially make a reskin with popular characters, with a lot of these lower quality games coming from new game developers inspired by FNAF to try and take on a project for themselves, so it could be really uplifting to see just how much influence Scott had towards the indie scene. Like I said, a lot of these clones are usually lower quality since they often just take popular characters to replace the original cast. That isn't a case for this game. Radiance is a name that's been on my radar for some time now, ever since I found out they were responsible for the Five Nights at Treasure Island series, an actually well-designed and terrifying experience that felt truly amazing to play when I tried it out. The reason why I love the Radiance team so much is due to the fact they take ordinary things that normally shouldn't be scary and flesh them out within their own worlds and expand upon them to a level that normally should not be possible. Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted was a game that I was not expecting to enjoy all that much, nor did I think I'd actually get creeped out by when I played it for myself. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let's go through what exactly made this game so terrifying to play. Chuck E. Cheese is one of the most iconic kids locations out there, though in recent years they may not have the same popularity that it once did. There are some very glaring similarities between FNAF and Chuck E. Cheese, from the type of restaurant, the pizza, and most importantly how much the animatronics played a role in each one. In fact, the similarities were so apparent, one of MatPat's first theories about the series was this infamous video which tried to relate the lore of the games to be related to some real life incident that did happen in a Chuck E. Cheese. So, just for clarification, no, the story isn't based on a spree, and the fact that there was 5 animatronics and 5 victims from what I could gather was just a coincidence. My point being, it is surprising that there weren't many popular fan games that tried to take inspiration by using a Chuck E. Cheese location as a way to entice fear onto the players, since there was a lot of potential that could have been used. I mean, just look at the real life animatronics. Ever since I was a kid, and even now, these things always made me feel a little weird. Before we even talk about the actual games, there's a reason why this is called Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted, since this was an overhaul from a previous game released on February 21st, 2015. In all honesty, this game was not that good. The phone guy's audio was extremely muffled and quiet compared to the rest of the game. The graphics were really outdated, but like I said, this is from all the way back in 2015. One of the few things I did enjoy was the ambience, which had this quiet, ghastly sound like someone crying out. This was mostly like your typical fan game that was prevalent during that time period, except there was one major feature that was a lot more unique, which is how you used the main door. Unlike most others where the door was near instant the moment you pressed it, it had closed extremely slowly, only adding to the stress you get from playing this game, something that will be brought up once again. Although it wasn't that good compared to the kinds of games we have now, I still believe it tried to stand out in its own way, which gave it a certain amount of charm that not many fan games from 2015 can really say, which is where the game development team Radiance comes into shine. A very quick recap from my Abandoned by Disney video, which was a short history of the messy development of the Five Nights at Treasure Island game. There was a FNAF game demo that would be about the Abandoned by Disney creepypasta. This particular game wasn't all that impressive. In fact, you could just outright call it bad due to the various different bugs and issues, but to its credit, it was the very first demo out of around 5, not including any cancelled ones. It wouldn't be until the final release of Five Nights at Treasure Island where it would essentially be a completely different game that was almost unrecognizable to the original concept, making an experience that I absolutely loved and is to this day some of the most fun I've had while playing any fan creations. Definitely a top 5. So when I saw that Radiance had another game overhaul by calling a reboot, I decided to play the original first before looking at anything related to the new release. And oh wow, September 4th, 2021. The game will be released, and just the intro screen alone, you could already know that this isn't your typical gag horror. Usually for these kinds of entries, they wouldn't try to take themselves too seriously, and might actually lean more towards comedy as a way to draw appeal. Here though, all that's gone for a consistent feeling of this creepy and gritty atmosphere that never changes. The music is melodic but dark. The original entry used a newer Chuck E. Cheese rap model, which if you didn't know, changed quite a bit throughout the years. In the evolution of Chuck E. Cheese animatronics from their Freddy Trap channel, they go through how he has developed. The rat design that most people know and have nightmares about is much for his smiles, big ears, and fluffy. Since you probably haven't been keeping up with the rat lore, they even recently changed him again to make him much more slim and a lot more simple. Obviously trying to cater to a much more childlike audience. Though for whatever reason, in one of their first locations in 1979, he's looking rough. I don't know how anyone thought this rat with an actual cigar was child friendly, but hey, the 1900s were a wild time. This was also much more creepy to me in all honesty, the way the dead eyes just don't function properly as he stares at you. It really is cool seeing the evolution of something so simple as this overgrown rat. The reason why I'm bringing this up is the fact that Radiance didn't want to make a simple Chuck E. Cheese reskin for a FNAF fan game, but instead deliberately used the older models as a way to drum up more fear for the players. As iconic as a new rat design is, it would have been much more difficult to make him creepy. So to start off, the title screen was just an older Chuck E. Cheese face staring straight at you, with one of its eyes not functioning properly. It really causes you to feel weird, like it's familiar but at the same time, surreal. Actually jumping into the game, we get a note that reads, "Hey Fred, I need someone to take my night shift this week because of some family issues. Would you be up for the task? Give me a call if you're interested. Thanks." Alrighty, I just want to talk about the graphics because, wow. Just looking at the original game that was taken inspiration from, there is a clear, distinct contrast between the production quality and polishing that has taken place here. The amount of time and effort that was put to make sure everything looks as clean as possible is very apparent. The graphics look a little too good that's off-putting, which only adds to the fear factor as it immerses us within the game even more. The office we are in has 5 porches in front of us, which have the names of all the animatronics within this building, as considered the stage area. For now, just understand that this will be important for later on. We get a phone call which tries to explain some things to us.
We normally don't have anyone looking over this place during the night, but since we're shut down for renovations, there has been some concern of break-ins and vandalism and that kind of thing. So we needed someone, you in this case, to look over the place and make sure everything, especially Chucky and his friends, is in check.
The voice acting is really good with it being very clear. A lot of fan games try to add static or bass towards the calls to, I guess, make it sound authentic, but oftentimes they cause the voice acting to become borderline unlistenable. Even though their voice actors are genuinely amazing and sound passionate, the heavy filters always seem to weigh them down, which is where we make it to one of the core features of this game that we need to go over: the camera systems. Unlike most games where there will be a map, here it's just the 5 channels that we cycle through. I'm not gonna lie, I really did love when both the original FNAF games and fan games have a map to show the location, since it lets me imagine how the animatronics might be walking towards us, as well as giving a clear indication of just how close they really are. Though it could be argued that this adds tension since you'll never really know just how close they are. Another thing is the time, which is only accessible when you're looking at the camera systems. This was something that the Return to Bloody Nights did as well, which I felt only causes you to feel like you're actually there. This game deliberately avoids any unnecessary designs that could potentially cause you to view this as just a game, and I love that. Of course, the iconic AM feature in the corner of the screen like I said, is iconic, but it kind of does take up space. Something you'll also notice is that the cameras are in black and white. A major complaint I had during my JR's video was the fact that the camera systems were heavily tinted with this green hue, and a lot of these locations were extremely dark, which caused the animatronics to lose a lot of their visually appealing nature. I personally love the designs of that game, which was an utter shame since you don't really see them in action. Here though, the opposite is true. Not only does a black and white clearly establish a dark aesthetic, which is what this game is going for, creates another level of realism since due to presentation's location and designs of the animatronics, this is most likely taking place in the late 1990s, but the most important factor of all of these, it doesn't take away from any of the visual designs of the animatronics. In fact, it only amplifies them, something that will be seen very shortly. For now, the phone guy continues to talk about what we could do around the office, which is when we bring up the doors behind us.
Also, behind you should be a security gate. Now, there were some issues in the past that basically forced us to put in that gate. It's a little broken, however. Instead of you just turning the handle and it keeping itself shut, you have to keep it closed by holding down the handle. I know it's a bit annoying, but in the case of an emergency, you're gonna need that gate.
The door will be something important for when we actually have to use it, but for now, we should just remember that we need to hold it down manually in order to close it. It's just the first night, so this should be an absolute cakewalk. Not like anything major is gonna happen. The portraits in front of us are important to remember since they will tell us when the animatronics are now active. The only one that's going to be active on night 1 is the Mickey Mouse Reject, who has a simple pattern of just walking around in a straight line towards you, nothing too complicated. This is where the black and white visuals show their strengths, as the dark locations that the overgrown rat is walking through shows how he's intentionally trying to hide in order to sneak up on you. He doesn't actually walk since he has no legs for some reason and just crawls, which is even creepier to imagine, with the absence of colors actually highlighting his design since it has intentionally been shown to almost look like he's been crying for some reason, with the dark streaks under his eyes. It's pretty simple to keep an eye on him, but when you hear his laugh, go behind you and close the door. To do so, like I said, you have to manually hold it shut as it falls down really slow. I hate and love this feature since for me, whenever I have to play through horror games, I stress extremely easily. So I oftentimes want to rush things. Forcing a player to slow down the movements in this manner is such an interesting way to cause them to start worrying about the other dangers that will pop up later on. Just for this rat, you don't really have to use the camera system since the only way to know if he's behind you is to listen carefully for the sound cues that he makes. A pretty simple premise. Though it's not just a laugh you'll make, but instead a bunch of different voice lines that will make you feel creeped out, especially if you've been used to the quiet ambience of the office. Happy birthday to you. The Radiance team always seems to strike gold whenever they make these kinds of voice lines for their games. After a pretty uneventful night, we get the first look of the After Night minigames, which is where we go to the storage area in order to stock up on some items. Being completely in the dark with only a flashlight to look around. Pretty easy concept with the strikes forcing you to be careful on where you click. For now, there isn't really anything to worry about in this section, though if you manage to get all the items without failing, we get a whole 2 hours taken away from the next night, which is something that I don't really see in FNAF Fan Games, a minigame that directly influences the next night in order to make it easier. This happens after every night, so I'll just be skipping over talking about this every time. Night 1 was pretty easy with only one animatronic active, but that changes for night 2. For tonight's phone call, we get introduced to what I'm assuming isn't actually an animatronic, but instead just a costume. Because his name is literally just a word, costume. He always starts in channel 4, which is the dressing room, with his gimmick being that he loves attention. While you're staring at him in a dressing room, he won't be able to move, which gives you a reason to actually have to use the camera system. If you don't manage to keep looking at him, he will begin to walk towards you, and when he gets to your office, he doesn't actually jump scare you. He is what I love to call a balloon boy character. He will cause your flashlight not to work at all and cause the gate to be unable to close down. This is bad since the other rat will be able to slip through and end your night. This will be extremely worse since on later nights, there will not only be more threats, but less time to really focus on him. So it's important to always keep an eye on the costume, who I love the design of, when he's on the camera systems. The darkness really causes the suit to look menacing and is one of my favorite design in this whole game, which only gets better with the animation of how he stops your door. You turn around using your flashlight only to see the costume standing in front of you. His sunken eyes staring but not moving an inch. For some reason he does not attack you directly. You try closing the door and hold it down, but it's no use. His supernatural strength forces the door open no matter how many times you try to pry it down. Your flashlight will no longer work at all while he does this. The first time this happened to me, I was in utter shock. I didn't understand what was going on and it kind of scared me, to be honest. When I first turned my flashlight on, it actually caused me to get chills since I was not expecting the costume to be that big, towering over us. This is probably my favorite part of this entire game. It was the reason why I wanted to make this review since it was such a powerful moment. We then move on to the second character introduced on this night and the new mechanic. Jasper is a dog with a banjo who also doesn't have legs for some reason. The door doesn't work for Jasper, but instead you will need to use something called the stage call. When he appears, he will start to make all the lights flicker as well as make this booming sound, which is when we'll need to hold down this button. Once we do, he'll return back to the same spot on his portrait. I really love the sound of the quiet on the set sound effect, like an old stage director getting frustrated as actors just aren't listening. There's nothing we could do to stop or slow down Jasper, so we'll need to keep a constant lookout on his pathing. The legless rat and Jasper both have very explicit sound cues to let us know when they're at the office, which makes dealing with them pretty easy, making this experience so far very fair. Another easy night goes by as we make it to the third. Mr. Munch is essentially a knockoff Grimace, who that's literally what he is, a purple looking creature. There's absolutely no way they could have made something so harmless look even remotely disturbing. This brings us back to the importance of the portraits. Once we see that Mr. Munch has disappeared from the stage, we'll need to go look for him in the camera systems in order to find him very quickly. When we do, his creepy face will cause the cameras to glitch out and he'll return back to his original spot. If for some reason you don't find him in time, he will simply jump scare you and end your whole night, making you have to really pay attention to the portraits quite a bit to see who's walking around, or in this case, for most of the animatronics, even Mr. Munch, also who doesn't have legs, is just crawling around. He sometimes makes his voice line when he becomes active, though not every single time, so it's best not to wait for a sound cue and just look around whenever he's missing. The nights at this point are becoming a bit of an issue, with the animatronics starting to really wear you down slowly. The next night is when things start to become a lot more difficult. We once again get a phone call, but to tell us that this place doesn't need any more help.
Hey Fred, you've made it to the fourth night. Nice job. I hope you haven't had any trouble. Look, what you're doing here is very appreciated, but management has let me know that we don't need your assistance during the night anymore. We're already keeping a close eye on the characters because of their glitch, and they're getting trash in a couple of days anyway, to be replaced with the new designs. The bugs in their systems are only getting worse, and to me that's a sign that they're ready to retire. Just finish your shift and then get out of there. If any of the other characters give you trouble, the stage call trick should work just the same. There's no need for you to come back after this. You don't even have to go down to the basement tonight if you don't want, but that's ultimately up to you. Anyways, good night.
Since we're a character in a horror-themed universe, of course we're going to ignore that and just continue forward. Helen Henny is the newest member to join and is probably what inspired Chica's design. To say that I adore her in-game model within the cameras is an understatement. The way her degraded design looks with the colorless palette makes her all the more terrifying to stare at. She's very similar to Jasper, who will start on the stage and make her way throughout the cameras. It's when she makes it to the restrooms or channel 3 that we need to focus on her. If she disappears, we'll need to use a stage call to make her go away. She has no sound cues and is extremely easy to miss as she's hiding in the dark corners of either the very left or the very right of the office. It's at this point where the mixtures of all the animatronic mechanics start to mesh really well, but for the worst possible way for the player. Obviously, Chuck E. Cheese and Jasper are easy to fight against since they will always make clear sound effects to let you know when you have to deal with them. It's when we start having to worry about the costume when things start to get tricky, since we will always need to check up on the costume in order to prevent them from making it to our office. Our camera system will most likely try to be on channel 4 at all times. We can't just really stare at him though, since Mr. Munch and Helen forces us to have to check the other cameras. Mr. Munch specifically needs us to look around or else he'll just straight up end our night if we don't. Helen has a little bit more leeway since we could technically see her in our office, though it is a lot harder and just easier to track her in the camera systems. The few seconds we leave channel 4 to focus on the others might lead to the costume making its way towards us, which might as well be an automatic game over. I've said this before and I'll say it again for this review, FNAF fan games that create character mechanics that specifically counter each other will always make an experience much better to enjoy. It's boring if we could simply exploit a mechanic, so by purposely creating a new character that causes the previous ones that looked easy before to essentially become difficult now, it adds more variety to the gameplay and makes it more fun overall. Something that the Radiance team has done multiple times perfectly throughout the Five Nights at Treasure Island game and Oblitus Casa. There's only one animatronic we really have to worry about who's introduced on night 5. This night begins with one final phone call directed to us, which for some reason explains we actually wanted another shift.
Hey, Fred. Management told me you wanted to take another shift? I, don't really understand why, but, I guess that means I get to keep you company one last time. I'm sure you heard about, what happened today. But in case you didn't, at the end of the day, everything was going fine with them. But then they all just spazzed out. I'd seen them glitch out before, but not like this. They were doing things that they weren't programmed to do, saying things that they weren't programmed to say. We had to close early. We couldn't even keep them on stage. I really don't think you should come back. It's like they're angry about something. Is this what you had to deal with? Look, man, thanks for doing all this, but I can't deal with this anymore. I'm leaving tomorrow. If you decide to come back, for whatever reason, I won't be there. This is becoming too much for me.
The phone guy understandably thinks that things are escalating too much for him, and so he just leaves, assuming he just quits on the spot. Pasquale, or the chef as I'm gonna call him, is the newest member active, and he's changed quite a bit from his original release back in 2015. I think that generally might be MS Paint drawn on him to make him look scary. It definitely is the design. He also is the only character I don't remember ever seeing from the Chuck E. Cheese cast, since the rest are ones I've seen briefly before, or at least knew the existence of. Probably because he is a human that his design doesn't really stick to me. He's the least active member of the cast so far. Typically, the last animatronic or enemy introduced within these kinds of games are the most aggressive or dangerous, but in all honesty, he might be the most tame. After getting off the cameras, the chef has a chance to start twitching on stage. When this happens, all we need to do is just press the stage call button. All the others that need this mechanic needs us to hold it down for a few seconds until they disappear, but for him, we simply need to just press it down quickly. What's pretty funny is that his jump scare is an Easter egg to his original one, since his eyes turning black is what it used to look like. This night is really difficult, but not because of any new mechanics introduced, but simply due to the aggression of the animatronics being elevated. I'm not ashamed to say that this took me quite a few attempts to finish up, mostly due to Helen being really good at hide and seek. After just a few attempts, around 38, we make it to the end. Soft bells are played as we get a check for $186 for our time working. This isn't the complete end, since if you do some challenge runs, you could unlock some new characters like modern Chuck E. Cheese, the Bear, Munch Jr., and Dolly Dimples, with each one adding a new mechanic that we just have to learn. I'm not gonna go through all of them since it's a lot and they aren't really relevant to the core game, however they are important for the true nightmare ending. This is the final challenge of the custom night, where you take every single animatronic, even the new unlocked ones, and turn their difficulty up to 20. You are delusional if you think I'm gonna try to take years of my time to beat this nearly impossible challenge. Impossible for me since my reaction time is as slow as a tortoise. The channel, Tristan, unlocked the true nightmare ending cutscene in the credits afterwards. It was the costume taken off its head, revealing a mirror. What deep lore significance was this talking about? No idea. There's a reason why I make gameplay videos and not game theories. There's also Krusty, who I forgot to mention, who will jump scare you if you're too slow in the Afternight minigames. So yeah, watch out for him as well. Now, to close off the video with something pretty cheesy, yes, a pun was intended, and yes, you should subscribe, Pizza Time Theater was the original name for the franchise before it filed for bankruptcy in 1984, then rebranded to Chuck E. Cheese, while also changing the mascots to look much more child-friendly. The reasoning for this overgrown rat changing to have much more mousy features was pretty simple. People just hate rats, but find mice pretty adorable. Also, maybe the Chuck E. Cheese lore really did influence FNAF in a lot more ways than I previously thought. Chuck E. Cheese having its grand reopening after its Pizza Time Theater location went bankrupt, and FNAF 2 location also having a grand reopening after the Fazbear Family Diner shut down. But wait, let's go a little bit deeper. The bite of 83 that happened in FNAF 4 caused Fazbear's Family Diner to close down in the beginning of 1984. Pizza Time Theater closed down the same year. Both would rebrand themselves with new animatronics to look a lot more child-friendly. How have I been playing FNAF games since 2014 and just finding all this now? To highlight why I'm bringing all of this up now, there's clear similarities between the timeline of these two locations and just how much inspiration Scott Cawthon took from the Chuck E. Cheese timeline to influence his own game was pretty distinct. The idea of a pizzeria being used in a FNAF fan game has been pretty overplayed to the moon, but for some reason, that doesn't make this game feel old. In fact, I kind of really loved it. When cycling through the different channels checking on the animatronics, we could see the decorations and we can really tell that this place is truly alive during the daytime. It is only at night where things start to go bad. When you go to watch how the animatronics used to look when these locations were called Pizza Time Theater, it only causes the animatronics to look like they fit in more within this location instead of just being made creepy for the fun of it. There's a reason why this story is being taken place back in time, with the final thing that needs to be mentioned being the story. Or more accurately, the lack of one. The only real piece of lore that I could understand that's going on is how the animatronics seem to understand that they're going to be replaced, and it's the reason why they're acting up right now. Whether they're scared that they're going to be scrapped or angry that someone else is going to be taking their place is unclear, but that is essentially what's happening right now, which is apparent through the phone calls. Which is what happened around 1984 when the older models were completely scrapped and replaced with much friendlier designs. I love how Scott took inspiration from the original Chuck E. Cheese timeline and now a fan recreation of FNAF decided to go full force with it. The only other piece of story that was presented was the ending after Nightmare difficulty, which like I said, I'm too dumb to really understand it. This game isn't really something that I heard about that often and is what I think is a hidden gem. Not a lot of people really talk about it, which is a shame due to how amazingly crafted this game actually is. I do highly recommend you go check it out as it's completely free to play, so there's literally no reason not to. Also, go support the Radiance team as any project they seem to work on always seems to come out as pure gold. A really underrated game development team. And that's really it. Also, shout out to Ori who's been making all the really cool thumbnails for his channel for quite a bit of time now, including the one for this video. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Leave a comment below something you'd really like, something you found scary, or something you just didn't like about it. There's probably something you could comment down below. In the meantime, I'm so tired for talking for so long, so I'm going to go take a nap. Until next time.